Hello guys, and welcome back to my newly branded channel, True Crime Autopsy, where we look into criminals, plagues on society, and morons who thought they could get away with it. And today's scumbag just so happens to be all of the above. We're taking yet another look at Jeremy Dewitte. For all my new viewers out there, Motor 1 is certainly no stranger to this channel, as I've already covered this guy twice. And in both deep dives, I examined his multiple arrests for police impersonation, his affairs, his unrivaled talent for breaking the law and getting arrested, and his failed attempt at trying to screw over an elderly man for thousands of dollars. But even after covering all that, I asked myself the question, is there really anything left to say about this guy? Well, yeah, it turns out that quite a lot happened since I made my last two videos. In November of 2024, Jeremy was sentenced to serve 7 years in prison for failing to register a vehicle as a sex offender. This wasn't the first time that Jeremy had found himself in this situation though. In the past, he would go out of his way to avoid having to register any vehicle under his name, hence why everything had to be put under Rania's name. In my past two videos, I talked about how the Florida justice system always seemed to turn a blind eye to Jeremy. They allowed him to stay on bond, despite the fact that he was still committing multiple felonies while on bond. And in most cases, the judges either didn't give a fuck, or they fell for whatever bullshit sob story he had prepared. And that worked. For a while, that is. Because yeah, it turns out that even Florida has a limit to how much nonsense they're willing to stomach. Given that this wasn't a one-off incident and that Jeremy has a history of doing everything he can to avoid having to register, the judge finally decided to do something about him. And in the end, Jeremy was sentenced to serve 7 years in prison for failing to register as a sex offender. As for how his wife and daughter are dealing with him getting locked up, again, let's just say that Florida isn't the only one who has their limits, as even Rania's apparently had her fill of Motor 1. She doesn't take his calls anymore, and there's even rumors that she's either filed or intends to file for divorce. I couldn't find any definitive proof, but if this is true, then well, it's another well-deserved loss for Jeremy. But given that it's Rania, it kind of makes you wonder if it's even really a loss at all. While Rania might be taking a step in the right direction, I still refuse to see her as a victim in any of this. She has lied for Jeremy, she's gone along with his schemes, and in the case of the Tony story, she stood by Jeremy as he conned an elderly man out of thousands of dollars. While I'm sure she may get sympathy from others, she won't get any from me. Alright, sorry for the Rania tangent, let's get back on track. Saying that Jeremy ended 2024 on a sour note would be a massive understatement. 2024 was a nightmare for him, and 2025 would not be any better. In my last video, I mentioned that it was only a matter of time before either the IRS or the insurance company came knocking on his door. Well, it turns out that the IRS got there first. His years of cheating his employees and Uncle Sam out of their due cut finally caught up with him. Like I said in my past videos, Jeremy would often pay his officers under the table, writing things like car wash in the memo line and doing everything possible to avoid running a legitimate operation. And while all of us were ringing in the new year with resolutions and hope for a better year, Jeremy was being sentenced to serve 41 months in federal prison. Oh, and he was also forced to pay back $70,000 in restitution. For years, Jeremy was able to get away with defrauding everyone. So much so that he probably just saw the IRS as just another mark. Well, he did try. And he did kind of fail spectacularly at trying to get away with it. Bigger, far more competent men than him have tried, but not one of them succeeded. If you try to go up against the IRS, you will lose every time.
Because I got three little letters for you, IRS. If they can get Capone, they can get you.
And with Jeremy set to spend the next 7 to 12 years behind bars, this is kind of where the Jeremy Dewitte Saga, as well as my continued coverage of him, comes to an end. And it's been a wild ride. When I first started covering Jeremy Dewitte, it started out as a fun little deep dive into a numbskull who, for the life of him, could not stop impersonating a cop. And eventually it transformed into a 3-part series about a man who made every wrong decision imaginable, and pretty much ended up destroying his entire life because of it. By the time Jeremy gets out of prison, he'll be over half a century old. And when he gets out, everything around him will have changed. His wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, probably isn't going to wait around. He'll most likely not have a great relationship with his daughter, and the same goes for his family, as I don't imagine they'll want to keep him around after everything he put them through. Overall, it just feels like a complete waste of a life. Jeremy once aspired to be a police officer, someone who would protect and defend the citizens of Florida. But instead, he became one of Florida's most notorious villains. And it all started with him choosing to impersonate an officer at that gas station all those years ago. He could have been honest and found a way to pay for his gas, but rather than do what's right, what's required of the police explorer that he was, he lied and he broke the law. And from that moment on, he never stopped doing either. Well, this is where I would end the video, but there's still one last bit of Jeremy Dewitte lore that I haven't covered. At least not in its entirety. So, because I want to give you guys the most thorough coverage I can, we're going to break down Jeremy's disastrous appearance on the Dr. Phil show. So back when COVID was running rampant across the country, Jeremy was less than happy about all the negative attention he was getting via YouTube. So, he decided that he needed to improve his public image. Not by being a better person or by actually running his business legally, no, but by going on the Dr. Phil show and lying his ass off about everything. Jeremy even volunteered to take a polygraph exam, and yeah, we'll get to that later. Jeremy starts off by telling the viewing audience at home that he's just a lowly funeral escort who's been unfairly targeted by the police. Not because he's an unrepentant sociopath who can't stay out of trouble, but because of that one time that he impersonated an officer. Jeremy eventually makes his grand entrance, looking proud as he rolls in on his totally not meant to look like a police motorcycle. And it's here that we get the first of many lies from Jeremy.
I think you've been harassed a lot by the police down there.
Yes.
Why are they picking on you?
My past.
Yeah, well, what about your past?
Well, sir, once upon a time when I was a very young man, while in the academy, I impersonated a law enforcement officer.
Even when Jeremy attempts to tell the truth, he just can't fight his natural instinct to lie about everything. I'm assuming he's trying to say that he was kicked out of the police academy, to which, yeah, that never happened. I don't know, maybe his high school had the word academy in the name, but I don't know, who am I to say? Jeremy's not exactly academy material. I mean, he is pretty dumb. The closest he ever came to being an officer was when he was a police explorer. At no point in his life was he ever an officer or even in consideration to be an officer. That incident at the gas station made sure of that. And then we cut to Jeremy showcasing his not a police uniform, as well as all the weapons and tools on his not a police utility belt. It's been said by Corporal Ramsey in interviews with Jeremy's other victims that most of this equipment is just for show. The pepper ball guns aren't even loaded, and the radios don't even work. I mean, this isn't even a uniform. This is a costume.
When a consumer buys a weapon, it's got yellow on it. That connotes that this is not a firearm that's shooting bullets,
Correct.
right? Does yours have this yellow on it?
I carry one that has all black. However, it's in a holster, so you can't see it anyhow.
You can see this.
That is true. Yes, yes, you can.
You could see it.
Yeah.
Why would you not carry one with yellow on it?
I can't answer that question.
Oh, I can answer that. It's because when you have one of these and they don't have one of these, then it looks like, well, one of these. And when you pair that with his adorable little costume, Jeremy gives off the impression that, well, he's one of these.
What do you wear on your duty belt?
On the duty belt that we wear, we have our radio. I have a tourniquet. We've come across cars on fire, things like that. CPR mask. I do have a baton. Most of my men and women have a baton, pepper ball, flashlight, as well as close contact mace.
Yeah, and at one point was literally any of this crap actually used. His job is to point people in the direction of the cemetery. The only power he has is the power to guide a funeral procession through a red light. He is a glorified line leader, a human GPS, nothing more. But probably the best part of his gear rundown is seeing him try to dance around the inclusion of handcuffs on his duty belt.
Well, you have handcuffs on here.
No, we don't.
No, I've
Sometimes
seen you arrested with handcuffs where they've taken handcuffs off of your duty belt.
some of my men and women do wear
No,
handcuffs.
you, not
Yes.
your men and women, you.
That's correct.
Who do you have the authority to handcuff?
We don't have the authority to handcuff
Then
anyone.
why would you carry handcuffs?
Well, if you're doing security or private security,
You're
or
not authorized to do security. Who do you have the authority to handcuff?
you have no authority to handcuff anyone.
Then why would you carry handcuffs?
Again, when you're doing in-house security, that you have the authority to wear handcuffs, you would wear those. Just like any loss prevention at a Target or a
But you
Marshalls
don't
or a
have,
Ross.
but you're not secure. You're not authorized to do security. You're not licensed to do security. You have no authority to handcuff anyone.
On a funeral escort, that is absolutely correct.
This isn't the first time that he'll directly refuse to answer a question, but it's pretty refreshing to see someone actually call him out on his bullshit. After that carousel of gaslighting, we get one of the more famous clips of Jeremy attempting to pull someone over.
What does it look like I'm doing, dumb? Get over before you find out.
Stop pretending you're a police officer.
Listen, I know what I'm allowed to do and what I'm not allowed to do. What you need to do is figure it out before you start talking and cutting us off.
I'm not cutting anyone.
Go ahead and pull your little phone out,
I'm not
do
cutting
your little
anyone.
Google search, and figure out what we're doing and what
I
we
know what
legally
you're
allow. Go.
It's been said that the blurry-faced man is actually a police officer from another state, that he actually flew back to Florida to assist in the failed investigation against Jeremy. When Dr. Phil asks Jeremy why he chose to behave that way, Jeremy does what he does best. He makes himself the victim, all the while blaming the actual victim for his actions.
So that nice gentleman there, what you don't see, because real world police edited the videos multiple times to the point where you're missing the 5 other times he's already driven and caused almost accidents in the funeral. Yes, I apologize for my demeanor and my speaking the way I was at that point. However, that was the 3rd time I'd already spoken to him. The first 3 times that I spoke to him that were a little more polite, that at that point was no longer working.
We then get to see Dr. Phil put an end to his claims of Metro State being a state-certified agency.
You're not a certified agency.
Right.
And you tell people that you are a state agency.
Right, we're a state-approved agency. We have our
No,
state
you're
license.
not.
Well, we're not a law enforcement agency by any
No,
means.
you're not a state agency. The state doesn't approve agencies.
As I said in my last video, Jeremy's state certification was literally nothing more than a license to operate. You can walk into any business and see the same certification hanging on the wall. Fun fact, I'm actually certified by my home state to do the job that I have. And unlike Jeremy, the state actually signed off on my certification. Can you guess what I do for a living? Comment below and I'll be sure not to give you a straight answer on that. And Amir's rebuttal is just ridiculous.
Right. So Mr. DeWitte's company, though, is registered to perform the services.
Well,
that they
so's a
perform.
hot dog stand, but they don't have officers.
What kind of defense is that? He's certified to do his job? Oh, you mean he's like, oh, I don't know, everyone else who has a job? Look, I know Amir's an amazing attorney and everything, but let's be honest, that was pretty weak.
We have a handful of videos where someone, in this case, is being belligerent, but in other cases are just non-compliant.
I'm sorry, Amir, but when you say belligerent, are you referring to the guy getting cursed at, or the bipolar sex offender in a cop costume?
But you know that he does that.
That he pulls cars over?
Yes.
I beg to differ.
Well, Amir, lucky for you, I have this clip prepared for just such an occasion.
Hey! 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 Pull over! Pull over! Hey! Pull your fucking car over! Pull over! Get your fucking car out of the way now! I don't know what you mean. I don't give a fuck what you don't understand! Pull forward now! Pull forward now!
And now you know. And knowing is half the battle. They then go into a long bout about Jeremy pulling cars off the road, and Amir is really not doing him any favors here.
When you're walking up to somebody saying, hold it right there, stay right there, pull over here, move on, go forward. You're directing traffic.
Here's the problem that we have. The statute that deals with funeral escorts is a carve-out that allows for certain conduct that would otherwise be in violation of this statute. That funeral escort statute is dated and it needs to be updated. It doesn't address current driving conditions.
Yeah, I get it. Some laws are old and outdated, and some even need to be amended. But just because Jeremy doesn't agree with the current laws, that doesn't give him the right to ignore them. We then get another classic Jeremy interaction.
I understand you're in a nice car and everything, but let's be a little more mature the way you drive. Let's drive the right way then.
Are you a cop?
Don't worry about what I am, because I'm a state agent. So what you need to do is make sure you're doing the right thing, boy. Nah, he ain't about that life. He's with that he ain't about that life.
Boy,
Yeah.
that's real nice.
Yeah, I know.
Real professional.
The way you almost hit me, boy,
yeah?
is the way it's professional.
You're not a cop.
You want to fight?
Violate rule too.
How's that?
Don't even act like stopping me.
I didn't pull you over. Did I make a traffic on you, boy? Yeah. You're lucky I don't get out. Come on, let's go, bitch. Get out. Yeah, let's go. No, come on. Boy, get out. I'm calling you out, bitch.
Come on, follow me.
That's what I thought.
Let's go.
Yeah, get out anytime. I got off my bike.
Let's go.
Okay,
Follow me.
where you want to go? Right there. We go straight, bitch.
I'm right over here.
Lights green, fuck. Go ahead.
Okay, let's be real. You know Jeremy would have gunned it the moment that guy got out of the car to beat his ass. When it comes time for Jeremy to explain himself, he proceeds to give us his supervillain origin story instead.
Have you ever been almost hit though? For no reason?
Oh,
Because
I've been hit.
okay, so have I. And I've actually was in a coma and I actually flatlined. And then they brought me back and I had amnesia for months and I was in a coma for a very long time. And so when I ride, especially when people are being disrespectful and they almost hit me, granted I was in my uniform that day and I was doing my escorts before and I was moving on to go back to the office. For somebody to almost cut me off and then hit me and not then flick me off and tell me he doesn't give a who we are, that's not right.
What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, what does that have to do with anything? Like, seriously? But it's worth sitting through just to get Dr. Phil's reaction to his bullshit.
The point where they say, I'm a state agent,
When he said, "Are you a police officer?" I say, "No."
which was your opportunity to clarify that and say, no, I am not.
Right.
What I am is a pissed off citizen that you almost ran over, but you didn't. You had an opportunity to clarify, and instead you said, I am a state agent. You went through a 45-mile-an-hour back there. You're talking like a cop.
Next up is some lady who's responsible for giving him most of his escort jobs. It's been said that her and Jeremy have a little something that goes beyond a simple business relationship, but I'm not sure. But given that Jeremy's a pathological liar as well as a serial adulterer, I wouldn't put it past him. The show then brings on former officer and YouTuber Sergeant Blue Bacon. He originally interviewed Jeremy on his own channel, and much like that interview, there were certain things that he was forbidden to speak about on the Dr. Phil show. Namely the fact that Jeremy's a sex offender, as well as the fact that he's been known to commit stolen valor. Jeremy's history with committing stolen valor is pretty extensive and well covered. He has tons of military iconography in his office, and as we've seen in the Tony tapes, Jeremy flat out lies and tells him that he's a former army specialist. This couldn't be further from the truth, as many have done their own investigations into his military service and found out that he never once served a day in the military.
But this is in response to your request for military personnel files pertaining to Mr. Jeremy C. Dewitte. Your request was processed under the provisions of the Freedom of Information/Privacy Acts. And then we'll go down a little bit more. No records pertaining to Mr. Jeremy C. Dewitte were found. And that's through the iPerm system, which is a database that has all your military records in it. And they also did a search through the MPRC in St. Louis. That's where I send all of my requests. and nothing found.
Even Jeremy himself admitted as much.
You ever been in the military?
I have.
You were in what branch?
Army.
The Army. When were you in the Army?
I wasn't actually in the Army. I was actually certified and trained, and then I
No,
did private details.
No, what I'm asking you, have you ever been in
Never
the United
swore
States
into the United
military?
States Army.
You were never
the
sworn
United
into
States
the
Army
military.
Trained me, and then the details that I do.
But that doesn't make you in the
You're right.
military.
Okay.
But hell, if that's going to stop him from lying in order to get some clients. When discussing Jeremy's uniform, he does admit that while it's not illegal to wear that, it's what you do in that outfit that matters. And in Jeremy's case, it definitely matters.
Well, I would like to start this by saying, looking at that uniform, nothing on there is illegal individually. The totality of the circumstances is where this becomes a problem. If I'm driving down the road and I see someone in an intersection wearing that, I'm not from Florida, so I can't speak for that, but that specifically, if I saw someone wearing that, stopping traffic, directing them, and I thought, well, that certainly looks like a police officer, because standing, 15, 20 feet away from it, I wouldn't be able to say, no, that's not a law enforcement uniform, having been law enforcement.
And I would also agree. I'm not from Florida, but if I were to see someone dressed like that, I don't think I'd be able to make heads or tails as to whether or not he may or may not be a police officer. After this, we get probably the best part of the entire show, where Dr. Phil lays it all out, telling Jeremy that he doesn't have to play cop. All he has to do is run his business legally and stop blowing up on random civilians.
And you don't have to take personal because some guy doesn't pay attention for a second and cuts into the funeral procession. You can go up and say, sir, I'm sure you didn't notice this, but there's a funeral procession going on. If you wouldn't mind, could you move out of here? And if he says, screw off, then he rides in the funeral procession. It doesn't make the person get there any slower. It doesn't disrupt the graveside service. It's not an emergency situation.
But let me ask you one question, Dr. Phil.
You've already asked me one.
Let me ask you another one then. Your absolutely beautiful wife, I would assume after how many years again you've been married?
44.
If she were to pass away tomorrow, the one person that you've spent 44 years with, and she was everything to you, you'd be the most emotional, distraught person you've ever thought of. And the company that you hired that is protecting you and getting you from point A to point B safely is doing it the professional way. And somebody decides that, you know what? Your funeral doesn't matter. Your family doesn't matter. It's more important for me to turn my high beams and hazards on and act like I'm part of the family or funeral, and actually almost put your family in danger and almost cause accidents or hurt your own family, that you understand that I'm keeping safe from point A to point B. Okay, so you understand that.
This is probably one of the most manipulative things that I have ever seen. He is so desperate to win a nothing argument that he's asking Dr. Phil to hypothesize the pain he would feel should his wife die. I like to think that this is how Jeremy justifies his abhorrent behavior. He weaponizes the grief of the families he's escorting just so he could put on a costume and treat everyone else like garbage. And Dr. Phil responds to this with probably the best answer he could possibly give.
Okay, my answer has two parts.
Okay.
Part one is, that is the clumsiest effort to deflect from everything I just told you that I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
Number two, if I lost my precious wife, I wouldn't give two who was driving behind me and getting in the line. I would be totally focused on her.
Right. And when I lost my son, I thought the same thing, Dr. Phil.
Very sorry that you lost your son.
When looking into Jeremy, I couldn't really find a lot of information about his deceased son. It's been said that he and Rania went through a miscarriage, and while I can sympathize with that, it still feels completely manipulative to use your deceased child for sympathy points. And this isn't even the first time that he's done this. He tried it out at one of his bond hearings, and even there it was inappropriate.
I understand 100% what you're saying. I need you to give me a minute to look at what you're saying.
Yes, Your
to
Honor.
verify that, okay?
My
Who's your
wife
lawyer?
just lost our second baby. I
Mr.
have
Wade,
to get home.
I need you to calm down.
The episode comes to an end with Jeremy getting the results of the polygraph that I mentioned earlier in the video. And yeah, it didn't go the way he thought it would.
What was the result?
It is my opinion that Mr. DeWitte was being deceptive to the target questions.
Okay, and what numerically, what would he have to have scored to have come out deceptive?
This methodology calls for a -3 or less in order to be in the deceptive range. Mr. DeWitte scored at a -37.
So this was not a close call.
This was not a close call. At no time was I lying. I know that I was very nervous. I know that this is my life that we're fighting for, but I can't answer that.
Just to be clear, polygraphs do not work. And the only people who say otherwise are the ones who make a paycheck off of tricking people into thinking that they work. But polygraph or no polygraph, it's been proven time and time again that he's a pathological liar who lies about lying and lies about telling the truth.
That's not me. That's not even my voice. Okay.
So this wasn't at all surprising for me. The episode ends with Dr. Phil doing his obligatory, "Don't worry, we'll get you some help." And I'm guessing he didn't get it because Jeremy went straight back to being Jeremy. And funny enough, once he got back to Florida, he was arrested for the very same thing that he's serving time in prison for. You see, when Jeremy went to California to appear on the show, he sort of forgot to let local law enforcement know that there was going to be a high-tier sex offender in the area. And that brings us to the end. Not just of this episode, but of my Jeremy Dewitte analysis as a whole. When I did my first video, it blew up in a way that I never expected, and it gave me some of the highest numbers I've ever seen on my channel. And I just want to be real with you guys for a moment. During the time I was producing those videos, I was also going through the toughest time in my life. I had just ended an almost decades-long relationship. I had just quit my job because I couldn't deal with my emotions from what was going on at the time, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. But it was the support of you guys, of the small community that brought me back and helped me to make this video. And I just wanted to say thank you for everything, for still supporting this channel, for still supporting the community, for being here even when I wasn't. I know I took a long break from making videos, but I'm hoping to remedy that and hopefully upload just a little more frequently. So thanks again. Please subscribe, stay tuned, and I will see you again. Goodbye.